Om Sahanā-Vavatu Sahanā Bhunaktu Saha Viryam Karavavahai Tejasvinavaditamastu Ma Vidvishavahai. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Om Below Satguru Shivananda Maharaj Ki, and for all the saints and sages of all the traditions. Okay, we come back to the questions that the student asks. What is this bondage? When did it begin? What is its cause? How to be free of it? And please tell me about the non-Atman, the non-I, the Atman, the I, and how to discern between. And so as we continue today, we'll discuss the Atman. We've been discussing, but now with Shankara's leadership, we'll listen to what he's sharing and discuss. The Atman, the I itself, the pure I, which has gotten wrapped up in the field, in the bodies. And we'll also discuss the delusion, the nature of the delusion. And one more time, we must, when we close, tomorrow morning, close this discussion, we must discuss how to be free of the delusion. Again, we do it all the way through, but we'll take Shankara's leadership in this and discuss. Now I shall tell you the nature of the Atman. If you realize it, you will be freed from the bonds of ignorance and attain liberation. There is a self-existent reality, which is the basis of our consciousness of ego. That reality is the witness of the three states of our consciousness and is distinct from the five bodily coverings. So what he's sharing, self-existent, it exists on its own, and it is the self. So it is I. I am it. I am it. And it exists on its own. Or I could say I exist on my own, free of encumbrances. Nothing caused me to exist. Nothing underlies my existence. Sorry?
And it doesn't depend on anything either. Right?
And it depends on nothing. It depends on nothing. So self-existent. And it's the hardest thing for us to catch because of delusion, just because of delusion. And if we look at our lives, there's a beautiful story that I heard first from Swami Sarva-Priyananda, and I'll share this morning, which helps to illustrate it. He speaks of a group of monks, 10 monks, who are off on a journey, off on a pilgrimage, traveling together, and they come to a river crossing. And when they get to the river crossing, the river is high, it's stormed. Normally there's a boatsman there and a boat to carry them across, but it's not there. And they really feel that they need to cross, so they're going to have to swim across. So they talk make sure that everyone knows how to swim and all of this, and then they cross. And immediately when they cross, they start checking to make sure that everyone got across. So they start counting. And they quickly come to the realization that there's someone who didn't make it because they're only counting 9. And they keep counting and they get very excited and all worked up. And of course, they lose their cool completely because someone's gone. But they're trying to figure out who's gone. And at that point, a passerby, a good Samaritan, comes along and sees their excited state and asks if she can be of assistance. And they say, yes, please, we've lost our friend. We don't know who he is, but we've lost him. He must have drowned in the river, or he's in the river. We need to just calm down, take a breath. Let me see. First of all, stand here. Let me count you. And she counts, and she gets 10. And they continue in their excited state, and they're trying to pay attention to what she's saying. But they're only 9. They're only 9. She says, no, they're 10. She says, here, let me help you. And she counts, helps the person count, one of them. And she holds his hand. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. And then she moves his hand in here. 10. And that's our situation. Is the Atman that is spoken of and glorified is self-existent. It exists where? It is the I. It is the subject to all of this. It is the experiencer of the 3 bodies, as if wearing them. It is the perceiver of the 5 sheaths. It even perceives or sees the feeling of separation. Ego-centric. It even perceives it or sees it. And having seen it, as it were, takes what it sees to be itself. And yet it is not, because it always remains the subject. It is the I that everyone speaks of here when we say, I need this. I need that. I don't want you here. It is the I at the center of all of this. And yet, because of delusion, because of the contact with the ego, and we discuss more the nature of delusion here this morning as we go on, but because of this delusion, I take myself to be separate, hungry, needful.
It feels like in this field,
yes,
the mind has to be something, because it cannot be like nothing.
And yet the mind itself is inert, in the same way that the body is inert. And this is discussed as well. There's one light, one life. You know, we were having the discussion day before yesterday. A different way to look at deep sleep state as dormant ego. Just consider that the sense of separation is dormant in deep tamas. And in that way, the ego I, non-existent. So it's not seeing, it's not enjoying, it's not remembering, it's not doing anything.
Right.
And it's said that consciousness itself, the real I, is still very much present and aware. But what's it aware of? It's aware of dormant ego. But what we said to try to catch it was, but the body itself is just fine.
But in that state, you're not in the play. You're out of the play at that moment.
Well, the ego is out of the play because the ego has quit playing.
Yes.
But the I is absolutely not out of the play. It's not involved in the play. But who is it that's healing this body? People say the body's healing itself. That's BS. How can each of these bodies heal themselves?
I guess they just mean that God is healing them.
Yeah, which is the I.
Yes.
So again, we come back to then what is this delusion? So, but there's no ego sensation about it. So there's no I-ness and mindness about it. Not even on awaking, we don't assert, I healed my body last night. Right? Because the ego was not present for any of that.
Yeah.
But you have evidence that it happened.
Yeah.
Yeah? And it's mysterious. Yeah, of course it's mysterious. And yet, nonetheless, and it's a universal force, is it not? A universal intelligence? Is there intelligence involved in that?
Yes.
Yeah, you had a cut yesterday on this body.
Yes.
And in a few days it will have healed. And the healing time is during deep sleep. It's in the night. Yeah? You can look at it in the morning and you say, oh, it healed last night. And you say, it healed itself. Well, no, because the body is a slab of cold meat. It doesn't do anything to itself. So, but there is an intelligence involved in it, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. Like a little weaver in there weaving. Yes? So there is intelligence involved. And there's prana involved. So there's the life force and flow of the life force. In fact, the life force is flowing in an unimpeded way. And then, so people expect with the saints and sages, for example, that because we see them, and who's seeing? Well, in a way we can say ego is seeing. In a way we can say ego. Because the senses are dancing for the ego, but really, and Shankara gets here, really everything is performing for the I, for the pure Atman. But we look at a saint or a sage, and we have the feeling they're doing this and they're doing that, and we superimpose our own mental conditions upon them, and we imagine, why are they doing this and why are they doing that, etc. And we're putting personal motives on it and all of that, right? And yet it's not different than the way nature is working during deep sleep. That one intelligence and that one life force continues to flow through, but in that case, the ego is not dormant. The ego has become integrated, non-existent as a individual factor. So that's where we say one has died to themselves, like that. Not a real death, but the death of ignorance within that existence. And so he continues, that reality is the knower in all states of consciousness. Not the knower in terms of the mental knower. That's again, in the delusion, when the mind hears know, then it's relating to a concept of knowing as in remembering, cognizing, working with it, figuring it out, sorting it out, etc., etc. But here it's a deeper, not knowing in that sense, more experiencing. So the reality, that reality is the knower in all states of consciousness, waking, dreaming, and dreamless sleep. It is aware of the presence or absence of the mind and its functions. It is Atman. So if you take the mind out of the equation for a moment in deep sleep, if you take the I-ness out of the equation for a moment in deep sleep, can you see that the process that's happening in the body is an intelligent process? And so is the Atman, is the pure Atman involved in that process? Yeah. Consciousness itself is involved in the process. Intelligence itself. Satchidananda is involved in some way in the process, yeah? It's just that what we consider to be I is not. Yeah? What we see, what I see, which is all of the mental images, all of the mental processing, that's what I see, and I take that to be myself in waking state and in dream state. And in deep sleep state, it's off. And yet life gets along just fine. Better.
Flows.
Yeah. Oh. So that reality, which seems like it's not I, but what we discover is, but I am one with it. But I am one with it. Because it's true that I am observing all of this, and that which I observe I am not.
Oh. Not an object.
It is true. I mean, that we can work out. The mind itself has the capacity, intellect has the capacity to work that out. Pure intellect. It's true what I see I'm not. And I can see that even the sense of separation is an arising. Because I have meditative experiences, even if I don't know how to practice meditation well. Here I'm speaking as intellect again. I have them. I had one, I'm just saying, right? Singing last night. But I lost myself. Completely lost the feeling of separation. But I was very much conscious, aware, yes, and involved with life. And so I get it. Then that feeling of separation and ego sense, that delusion is an arising. So therefore I know that I am seeing it. Because sometimes I take myself to be separate and other times it's absent from my experience, from my life experience. Now the teachers will say it's absent during deep sleep. Yeah, it's clear that it is. But it seems like I'm toast, even though I'm not. But here in these meditative experiences during waking state, we say, it is arising. Yeah? So therefore I am seeing it. Therefore I am not separate. I'm not that idea. I'm not that notion. I am not that feeling. What I took to be true, I am not that. And that's crucial. He says that reality sees everything by its own light. It even sees the absence of the mind by its own light. And it sees the dreams by its own light. And it even sees in the waking state by its own light. Now, again, we'll listen to that and say, that's crazy, because we can't see when it's dark in waking state. Okay, fine. But that's only a physical seeing, speaking of the sense objects, the physical sense objects and the physical eyes. But now if you step back further again, and what am I really seeing? Well, I'm seeing the desires. I'm seeing the feeling of separation. I'm seeing everything that's happening in the mind, and even in the waking state, what I'm seeing is what the mind is telling me. Yeah? I'm seeing mental images that are created in the mind of all of this stuff. And nothing wrong with that, by the way. There's nothing wrong with that process. The suffering, it comes in when we take that to be the reality instead of this to be the reality. Instead of Atman, the eternal, the absolute, to be the reality. So this seeing, this deeper seeing, this observing, it never stops. Yeah. That reality pervades the universe, but no one penetrates it. It alone shines. The universe shines with its reflected light. Because of its presence, the body, senses, mind, and intellect apply themselves to their respective functions as though obeying its command. You know, in the egoic state, in delusion, it seems like everything's happening at my will. This is ego, or not. I try to make it happen, it doesn't happen. It seems like I'm doing. That's an ego feeling. That's a feeling we're experiencing that I'm doing. Part of the part of the experience of living with this silly ego. But in the times when that ego sense is out of the way for us, either the meditative experience, meditative state, experience of meditative state, or deep sleep, which we've confirmed. Either way, still, this mind and clearly this body and all the processes of the body, they're still functioning just fine. And who are they functioning for? They're functioning for the I, the pure I. As if. As if. So he says, because of its presence, everything seems to come to life and perform for it at its command. Ego says it doesn't always do what I want. But at a deeper level, it would be performing to the lila, to the dance. It would be dancing because of the presence. Without the presence, no dance. So all of this that modern science is observing now, now that they've come to the place of seeing that the universe is not locally real, then what is causing all of this appearance? That would be it, or the I.
And it cannot be observed.
Right.
Well, and the one observer as well. I mean, it is coming in, manifesting, apparently manifesting, projecting, in order to serve the I.
Yeah.
The I, the pure I. Its nature is eternal consciousness. The ego sleeps, as it were. But it doesn't sleep. Thank God the ego sleeps. Because as a teaching mechanism, we get to see it. We get to see life carries on, ego or not. In fact, it's better. Yes. So we get to see that. So as a teaching mechanism, thank God it sleeps. But also, my God, can you imagine a world where it never sleeps?
You're thinking of all sorts of things.
Where there's no possibility of going beyond it? Where there's no break, no freedom? That's a terrible thought, isn't it? This is the Atman. He says, it knows everything objectively, just as a man knows the objective existence of a jar. So it is the observer to all it knows, relates to everything objectively as an object. In the same way that the man knows a jar. So it, and the capacity exists for it or I to recognize what I'm seeing here. And that's this turiya, as it were.
Yes.
To recognize what I'm seeing and recognize I'm never sleeping. I'm here. I'm one with life. And I experience different aspects of this life. I experience the waking state. I experience the dream state. I experience the deep sleep state. But I, as the experiencer, am never other than here. This is the Atman, the Supreme Being, the Ancient. It never ceases to experience infinite joy. It is always the same. It is consciousness itself. The organs and vital energies function under its command. Here within this body, in the pure mind, in the secret chamber of intelligence, Vivek, in the infinite universe within the heart, the Atman shines in its captivating splendor like a noonday sun. By its light, the universe is revealed. It is the knower of the activities of the mind and of the individual man. Right? The individual man is that ego. So it is the knower of the activities of the mind, yeah. All the thoughts about that person, those are all activities of the mind. So it is the knower of these. And clear. Yeah. And of the individual man. It is the witness of all of the actions of the body, the sense organs, and the vital energy. And again we see, when we do this, I see it. I see all of it. If I really want to look and see the muscle movements, I can be aware of them. I can tune myself to them. It's quite mysterious and magical in that way. It's possible to do. But still, I'm not the doer of it. But it does for me. Yeah? So the senses, the whole field for the eye performs. It seems to be identified with all these, just as the Atman, seems to be identified with all these, just as fire appears identified with an iron ball, but it neither acts nor is subject to the slightest change. The example is given in the teachings of a fire and an iron ball. So you can imagine someone making a knife. What do you call someone who works with iron or steel? And blacksmith, yeah, like that. There are other names as well. So who has the fire and takes the iron ball and places it in the fire, and of course the iron ball heats and becomes malleable, and then it can be reformed. Except it never is anything but iron. And the heat is never its property. The heat always belongs to the fire. Even when it's coming out of the fire is still with it. And yet the fire is not its property. And so in the same way, the Atman seems to. It seems to be identified with all these, just as fire appears identified with an iron ball. But it neither acts nor is subject to the slightest change. The Atman is birthless and deathless, right? I can do this all day long, but if I look deeply, I will see. But it's doing it for me. And there are a series of laws that determine how this is appearing to happen. And science is exploring these now and finding some of the laws.
So in this analogy, the iron ball is these bodies, and the fire is the
eye. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. And so the fire seems to come into union with the iron ball. It seems like the iron ball and the fire are one for some period of time, but the fire is always the fire.
Right.
And the iron ball is always the iron ball. But it's not ball anymore. It's still iron.
And it has the quality of the fire, the heat.
It only borrows it. And once again, the body only borrows the quality of the Atman. Life itself, it only borrows for a period of time.
And the mind, too.
Yes. And the mind the same. Yeah. The Atman is birthless and deathless. It neither grows nor decays. It is unchangeable, eternal. It does not dissolve when the body dissolves. Does the ether cease to exist when the jar that enclosed it is broken? The Atman is distinct from Maya, the primal cause, and from her effect, the universe. The nature of the Atman is pure consciousness. The Atman reveals this entire universe of mind and matter. It reveals it. It cannot be defined. The Atman cannot be defined. So it sounds like he's defining, but he's trying to help us catch it. But it exists on its own, and it actually can't be defined. The best way to define it is neti-neti. Not this, not that, which is exactly what he's doing. But then he's trying to help us to catch it, too, because it's self-existent. And we just need to catch it. It cannot be defined in and through the various states of consciousness, the waking, the dreaming, and the sleeping. It maintains our unbroken awareness of identity. It manifests itself as the witness of the intelligence. And then, how to be free. We'll take a few more minutes here this morning. What we'll do is we'll discuss delusion. We'll skip ahead a little bit, and then we'll continue tomorrow morning with this freedom. So by this point, the disciple, and see about us as disciples, as students, by this point, the student is seeing the nature of the delusion and the depth of it. It is catching, okay, perhaps it's true, perhaps I am really the observer of all of this, even these desires, even this mental function. Perhaps it's true, and yet still I seem to be it. Still, I seem to be this mind, this body. And so the student at this point says, then this delusion, if it's beginningless, if it didn't have a beginning, this delusion, this taking myself to be all of this, then it must not have an end either. Then perhaps I'm doomed to it forever. And so Shankara speaks to that. He says, your question is to the point, O prudent one. Listen to me attentively. Something which has been conjured up by delusion and only exists in your imagination can never be accepted as a fact. By its nature, the Atman, the I, is forever unattached, beyond action and formless. Its identity with objects is imaginary, not real. We say the sky is blue. Has the sky any color? The Atman is the witness beyond all attributes, beyond action. It can be directly realized as pure consciousness and infinite bliss. Its appearance as an individual soul is caused by the delusion of our understanding and has no reality. By its very nature, this appearance is unreal. When our delusion has been removed, it ceases to exist. So he says, yes, there's a way out of it. And yes, this apparent world ceases to exist. Now, we talk about this. And before we get freaked out, anyone joining us here, there are two aspects of Maya. There are said to be two aspects of Maya. The first is the projection, so the apparent world. Mm-hmm. So this appears to be a microphone. It's not, but it appears to be. And so here in this plane, in this waking state, we utilize it as a microphone. It's fine, and it functions properly. Is it really? No, it's a form of Brahman. It's a form of the Absolute. Really, I mean, the signal that it carries, where did that come from? It came from the Absolute. The metal that it's made of, where did that come from? Well, its reality is the Absolute. The skin and bones that turn the knobs, what is that? Well, its reality is the Absolute. And so, does all of this stuff vanish? No, the appearance remains. This is the second quality of Maya that we're discussing now. The appearance is eternal. The appearance is eternal. So waking state continues. No matter, even if we blow ourselves up in this earth, we're in an infinite universe and there are infinite universes and the appearances will continue. There will even be an appearance of an earth blowing up.
Oh.
Who will see it? I will see it.
So true.
It goes on and on. And so if we back up for a second, we say, one eye, really one eye. Who's going to see it? You're going to see it. Well, okay, fine, but I will see it. Because you and I meet at the same place. Same one awareness, one consciousness. And so this continues, the show continues, the appearance continues. What's our issue then? Our issue is that we take ourselves to be this. And as a result, that we take ourselves to be subject to death. We take ourselves to be subject to pain. We accept the story within the head that says, oh my God, when this happens, it's going to be the worst thing ever, and I'm going to suffer so much, and then it'll be over. But it's not like this. This is a story. And so we accept the story as real, and as a result, we experience this suffering. If we know ourselves to be eternal, now, there are rules, there's dharma. We have to be kind to people. We have to be loving. We have to be accepting. There's no freedom without this, without service. There's no freedom. These are basics. We have to live dharma. Even if we know who we are. We have to oversee this. We have to purify it. We have to live the dharma. We have to put it into practice. We have to love and serve all. There's no freedom. There's no happiness without it. We pervert this life if we don't. And so we must do it. This is not a question. It's not about, well, then if I'm not this, then I can do whatever the heck I want. Well, at our own peril. At our own peril. This suffering is hell. I mean, hell is this suffering. And so when we begin to realize, we say, I want to be free of it. I want to be free of it. Well, here's the rule book. It's possible to be free of it. I am that eternal. I am not this, and this. And so what does this mean that the world ends? It means that there never actually was a world. It means that there is and has always been Brahman, or what we call God, or what we call the divine, or what we call Divine Mother, or what we call Allah, so many different names, right? Consciousness, super consciousness, intuition, that this divine beneficial I, which is one with the substratum of all of this, which itself, through the creative force and laws and powers, brings this illusion into play, this beautiful illusion.
Sure.
And so one is able to see the underlying reality of it, not as a visual,
Right.
but through comprehension, through understanding, through letting go of that which is not real, which is illusory, which are ideas like that. And so this is what Shankara is saying is okay, the delusion is I and you are in this world, and all of this is independently real. And my happiness, my fulfillment is subject to getting the right stuff and avoiding the wrong stuff, which is an impossibility. That I and you as separate beings, I am subject to, my happiness is reliant upon love and being loved without condition. And yet unconditional love doesn't exist within this experiential plane. It's in the I itself. And so this then is suffering. We in the delusion, we live as if to get something that in truth we already are. And so this is the suffering, and freedom from the suffering Shankara is pointing to here. And he says, yes, it's possible to be free. And then he says the delusion of world vanishes. Please hear, that doesn't mean that it's all deep sleep. It doesn't. It means very much awake and able to see to the heart of the matter, and able to live life in a loving, present way, without being subject to fear and anger and the motivations of the voice in the mind that says, I have to put myself first. Okay. Could we check for comments? Thank you. Comments and questions? Jai Gurudev.
Someone's asking, is the Atman then a manifestation of Brahman?
Is the Atman a manifestation of Brahman?
Yes.
Actually, the Atman and Brahman are identical. I'll share a little aphorism about that. So, if we took a purely physical view of this life, and if we accepted for a moment that I am this body, and I came from my parents, and my mother had the egg, and my father had the seed, which was of them, their DNA, and they came together in a union, and I am that fruit of that union. Therefore, in that purely materialistic view, I am them. Through that process, they gave me themselves. In the same way that the tree is the fruit of the seed and existed within the seed, then I existed in that egg and that sperm. And when they came together, I am the product of that. So if I don't have any other, then that's what I am. But what we discover here is that Brahman, what we call Brahman, is the seed and the egg for all of this. And therefore, I am that. So the Atman, the soul, what seems to be an individual soul, is of that. In other words, it is the material cause for it. So I could say manifestation, but that's not actually. The tree is not a manifestation of the seed. The tree is not a manifestation of the seed. The tree is the seed. And the seed is the tree. It's not, manifestation is an extra word. The tree is the seed, and the seed is the tree. And in the same way, I am not a product of, I am. At a separate level, if we say, okay, we're all really individual, okay, fine, then we all share that common reality. And if you put us all together, you would find that in total we equaled that. But here it's different. As soul, as the I. This is where we get to, is there's one I. And I. But we're not talking about ego sense. We're not talking about ego I, because that's all, disappearance. Oh. Okay, we'll close. Final prayers in Arati, the short version, page 156. Om Trayambakam Yajamahe Sugandhim Pushtivardhanam Orvai Rukameva Bandhanam Mritor Mokshiyamamritata Om Trayambakam Yajamahe Sugandhim Pushtivardhanam Orvai Rukameva Bandhanam Mritor Mokshiyamamritata Om Trayambakam Yajamahe Sugandhim Pushtivardhanam Orvai Rukameva Bandhanam Mritor Mokshiyamamritata Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Ambalo Satguru Shivananda Maharaj Ki Jai, and for all the saints and sages of all the traditions.